I wonder what's inside. Maybe ancient gold coins. That's Dietrich Brandis's chest. The first Inspector General of Forests of India, also commonly known as the father of tropical forestry. Look, his name is engraved on the chest. This is the chest he lost when the boat carrying it drowned on its way from Calcutta to Rangoon. It contains his herbarium and botany books. Actually, it was a turning point in his life as it made him change his focus from botany to forestry. Dietrich Brandis was born in Bonn, Germany, and worked as a lecturer of botany. He joined the British service in 1856 as the superintendent of the teak forests in eastern Burma. During the British rule in India, due to the demand for trees for railways and other requirements of timber by the British, Indian forests were getting depleted. The British were particularly worried about the use of forest produce by the local people and the unregulated felling of trees by traders. To conserve the forests, by 1864, the British felt the need of an organized forest department with a complete administration of the forests in India. They invited Dietrich Brandis for advice and to organize the administration of the forests in India. He was appointed the first Inspector General of Forests in India. Brandis formulated new forest rules and helped establish research and training institutions. He set up the Indian Forest Service in 1864 and helped formulate the Indian Forest Act of 1865. To help spread the study of forestry, Brandis founded the Imperial Forest Research Institute at Dehradun in 1906. He introduced and started the practice of scientific forestry or commercial forestry in India. Let's understand what scientific forestry means and how it was practiced. Scientific forestry is the practice of cutting down all the trees in a forest and replacing them with one single species of tree that is planted in straight rows. This planting of one type of tree in straight rows is also known as a plantation. The Indian Forest Act was enacted in 1865 and was amended twice in 1878 and 1927. The Forest Act Amendment of 1878 provided for the division of forests into three categories.
Ma'am, it is lagging.
Yes, ma'am, it is
Reserve
lagging.
forests were forests completely under reservation or the protection of the government. Protected forests were forests under partial protection of the government. Village forests were forests whose land rights were assigned by the government to a village community for its use. The enactment of the Forest Act completely changed the face of Indian forests and the lives of several people. It also became Dietrich Brandis's most significant contribution to Indian forestry. You have now reached the end of the module on Rise of Commercial Forestry. In this module, you learned that Dietrich Brandis was appointed the first Inspector General of Forests in India. He set up the Indian Forest Service in 1864 and helped formulate the Indian Forest Act of 1865. Brandis founded the Imperial Forest Research Institute at Dehradun in 1906. He introduced and started the practice of scientific forestry or commercial forestry in India.
Okay,
Students, so that was a recap of what we have covered so far in the section 1 on why deforestation, and in section 2 how the rise of commercial forestry started and how what kind of role the British played in the management of forest based on scientific forestry. So now we will proceed from here. I'm going to share my screen again. Okay, I'm going to share my PowerPoint presentation. Yes. So now there was a change in the forest laws. As I discussed earlier, reserve forests were considered as the best, and villagers' entry to these forests was prohibited, and they could not take anything from these forests. They were allowed only in protected or village forests for taking wood or for household building and fuel or any other purposes. Am I clear here? Everybody is clear? Any one of you can speak.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
Okay, now we'll begin with the second subsection of the second section on rise of commercial forestry. That is, how were the lives of people, the forest dwellers, was affected. The forest dwellers and villagers needed forest not only as a resource for fulfilling their basic needs, but also use it as a means of livelihood and occupation. They collected nature produce such as dry and fallen wood for fuel, small timber, bamboos, nuts, berries, bones, hides, skins, etc. as a source of their income. They needed the forest for medicines, fuel, fodder, making agricultural implements like yokes and plows, bamboo for fences, baskets and umbrellas, for edible oil, and many other such purposes. Okay, so this was the idea. This was what the village, the tribals, the village, the forest dwellers had about the forest. It was their motherland. It was their home. So it was giving them everyday needs. It was fulfilling their everyday needs. Okay, now I'll go to the next slide. I showed this picture to all of you yesterday on the various, for which all purposes the forest dwellers were using the forests for.
Yes.
On the contrary, what was the idea of the forest department? They needed forests for specific trees suitable for building ships and railways, and they needed certain varieties of trees like teak and sal. As I was explaining you yesterday, the trees take few years to grow. So they targeted the village dwellers not to use the products of forest. Not only that, but they tried to control the growing of the trees, which means that many varieties of many species of trees were cut down to grow only specific trees as per what they were being taught in the scientific forestry in the research institute. Particular species like teak and sal were promoted, and any commercial based plants or species of plants were promoted, and others were cut. Okay, so you can differentiate between what was the idea of the forest dwellers about their motherland, their home forests, and what was the idea of the British and the forest department. Okay, here I guess I showed you this picture also of the women in the tribal women collecting the mahua seeds. Its seeds are used for extracting the edible oil for everyday cooking. So this is an example of how the tribals were completely dependent upon the forest for their everyday needs. Here, this picture also I have already shown you of the tej patta or the tendu leaves. So it was supplied all across the country, and it was useful for their occupation, collecting the leaves and selling them. So this was related to their occupation, which is again forest based. Here you can see they also conducted the shifting cultivation or jhum cultivation. I have already explained to you in the previous class what is shifting cultivation. They burn few vegetation in a patch of land, and over there they conduct the cultivation, and after the harvest they leave the land for fallow for 7 to 8 years, so that naturally occurring vegetation grows over there, and they move to a different place for conducting cultivation. So this practice was a customary practice which was being practiced since many centuries by many tribals, especially in Asia, in Africa, in South America, and even Southeast Asia. Okay, now after the Forest Act came into being, there were many hardships for the villagers and the forest dwellers. Is the screen visible to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Now there were hardships
Yes,
for the
ma'am.
villagers and the forest dwellers. After the Forest Act of 1878 and 1927, all everyday practices of cutting wood for their houses, grazing their cattle, collecting fruits and roots, hunting and fishing became illegal. People were forced to steal and bribe the forest guards because day by day, as their access to the forest was being controlled, so their everyday life was getting severely affected because they hardly had anything to eat, or as they were completely dependent upon the forest. It became common for the forest guards to harass the people also. Okay. Now I'll go to the next slide. So here we have understood how the life of the tribals was getting affected by the
Yes, ma'am.
forest laws. Okay, in this activity, I have asked you one question here. Children living around forest areas can often identify hundreds of species of trees and plants. How many species can you name? So I will ask somebody, you can give the name of some trees or plants you already know. Okay. Anoop, can you name a few? Anoop, can you name a few trees and plants which is not mentioned in the lesson? Any new names of new trees or plants? Brian, Vedant.
Mahogany, rosewood, then
Teak.
Teak. Okay. Yes. So here,
mahogany,
rosewood,
mahogany,
mahogany. Okay. Rosewood.
mahogany.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So now here we can
Sandalwood.
see that, yeah, sandalwood. So we don't know many varieties of trees. You know, if we go to a child who has been a forest dweller, if we ask that child, then he will be able to tell us the names of exotic species of plants and animals. The idea is they had access to the forest and they had knowledge about the forest. But now their access to the forest was completely prohibited, and they were not allowed to utilize any kind of forest produce also. Okay, now Nilay, Kushal. Nilay, Kushal and Brian, your mic is on.
Yes.
Ma'am, your voice is lagging.
Nilay, Brian,
Ma'am,
Nilay,
your voice is lagging.
yes, ma'am. Switch off your mic. Please switch off your mic. I can see the names of students here. Kushal, Nilay, your mic is on. Why your mic is on?
You only off the mic.
अरे माइक चालू आहे सको ऐका नाही रे.
I can hear you. Please switch off your mics. Don't unmute. I have given you the right to unmute. That doesn't mean that you will unmute on your own. Okay. So now, how did forest rules affect cultivation? So far, we have understood how the people were affected. Now we're going to talk about how the cultivation, the shifting cultivation, had an effect of the European colonialism. One of the major impact of the European colonialism was on shifting cultivation, which is also known as Sweden agriculture, which suffered a setback. It was a customary practice of practicing the shifting cultivation in by most of the tribals in the various forests across the world. In shifting cultivation, parts of the forest are cut and burnt in rotation. Seeds are sown in the ashes after the first monsoon rains, and the crop is harvested by October and November. Such plots are cultivated for a couple of years and then left fallow for 12 to 18 years for the forest to grow back. A mixture of crops is grown on these plots. In Central India and Africa, it could be millets. In Brazil, manioc or cassava. And in other parts of Latin America, it could be maize or beans. Okay? So Now here, this is one example. We have the Tongya cultivation in Burma, which is again the shifting cultivation in the forests in Burma. Here, burning of the forests. Here it is happening in Penda or Podu plot, again in Burma here. Okay, so see these glimpses of the picture of the how the shifting cultivation happens. I just gave you that a glimpse of that. Okay, it is a traditional agriculture practiced mainly in Asia, Africa, and South America. Okay, now it has many local names such as lading in Southeast Asia, milpa in Central America, pitimene or tabby in Africa, chena in Sri Lanka, in India, dhya, penda, bewar, nevard, zoom, podu, khandad, and kurmi are some of the local terms for Sweden agriculture. Anu, please switch off your mic. So we'll move on to the next slide. What was the impact on the shifting cultivation, why and how it happened? The Europeans regarded shifting cultivation as harmful for the forests, and that the land used for cultivation every few years could not grow trees for railway timber. So this was their fear, that if they grow, if they allow shifting cultivation, so it will stop the growing of the commercial trees. And every few years they needed this timber, this durable timber, for building ships and laying the railway tracks. Also, there was a danger of flame spreading and burning the valuable timber. That was also something the British were worried about. It was harder for the government to calculate the taxes, how much of produce is happening and how to, how to get revenue from that. Anu, please switch off your video also. Anu, please switch off your video. Okay, therefore they decided to ban shifting cultivation. As a consequence, many communities were displaced from their homes in forests changed their occupations, while some rebelled. So children, this is how you can see what was the impact of the change in the forest laws after 1865, then in 1878, and then finally in 1927, which led to the change in life of the forest dwellers, the people living there, and the practice of shifting cultivators, and the lives of the nomadic tribes was also affected. Now I'll come to the third subsection of the second section on rise of commercial forestry. Who could hunt? It is a very important section, so please everybody focus here. The customary practice of forest dwellers were prohibited by the new forest laws. Those who were caught hunting were severely punished for poaching. Yes, Anup, can you tell everyone what do you understand by poaching? Anup, please answer the question. What do you understand by poaching?
Animals is for poaching.
Brian, can you answer?
Poaching means killing of animals in an illegal way.
Yes, so there is these animals were killed. Illegal way means here the law was there that you should not be hunting or fishing. So this law was introduced by the British against the customary, tribals who were living, the forest dwellers. Okay, but on the other hand, there were new rules for the British themselves. So what were those new rules for the British? On the other hand, while the forest dwellers were deprived of their customary practice to hunt, hunting of big game became a sport under the colonial rule, leading to increase in the scale of hunting to such an extent that various species almost became extinct. As it is mentioned in your book also, children, while the forest laws deprive people of the customary rights to hunt, hunting of a big game became a sport. In India, hunting of tigers and other animals had been a part of the culture of the court and the nobility for centuries. Which means the Mughals, the Rajas, and the kings, they had been practicing the hunting in the forests for various centuries. But under the colonial rule, it became a sport. Now these British, what they felt was, they saw the large animals as a sign of the wild, the primitive and savage society. So they believe that by killing the dangerous animals, the British will be able to civilize India and the Indians. So this was their idea, and they introduced this sport only for the British, the officers. And on the other hand, the customary practice of the tribals in the forest, they were stopping them from conducting any kind of hunting or fishing. So you can see the kind of difference that was created by the Europeans when they colonized India. I hope this is clear to everyone. Yes, any one of you can say yes for an answer.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Now here, beta, you can see this picture of a little fisherman, and this child has learned he has been in the forest and he's learned how to hunt and how to fish and how to collect the forest produce and cultivate. So this was their customary practice. This was their life in the forest. But on the other hand, here, after the colonists, the Europeans came to India and they started managing the forests, this is what started happening. Here, there is one small activity here, Lord reading hunting in Nepal. This is a picture, it's a view from Nepal. Found the dead tigers in the photo. When British colonial officials and Rajas went hunting, they were accompanied by a whole, retinue of servants. And usually the tracking was done by skilled village hunters, and the Sahib simply fired the shot. So are you okay, children? The connection got lost for a few seconds. I hope you all are back with me. I'm sharing the screen again. You all are with me here? Yeah. Okay. So here, how many tigers are there in this picture? Please count and let me know how many tigers are there in the picture.
Ma'am, your voice is lagging.
Ma'am, your voice is lagging.
Can you please
Yes, ma'am, so much.
Can you please find out how many tigers are there?
Ma'am, your voice is lagging.
Ma'am, can't understand what you're telling. It's lagging too much.
Ma'am, 7 tigers.
8 to 9.
Tigers, ma'am.
Yeah, so there are in total 8 to 9 tigers that you can see in this picture. So what message does this picture give you? I will ask one of you to answer this question. Okay. Now, Arya More, can you please answer the question? What message do you get from this picture?
Ma'am, people are killing the tigers.
Not people, it was the British who introduced this sport here in India. And they believed that they were large savage animals, and if they kill these animals, what will happen? They will be able to civilize the Indian society also, because they felt that the Indians were uncivilized and savage, and they did not had any kind of hunting skills. Here, as this picture explains you, that there was a whole group of tribals who used to help them find out their hunt, and the Sahib simply fired the shot to show that yes, the king that they have killed these many tigers. So this was just a pomp and show by the British to show that how well equipped and skilled they are in hunting. So the message that we get from this particular picture is that on one hand, they were not allowing the village.
Not again this.
Ma'am,
No,
ma'am is there. Ma'am is there.
Okay, I am back here. I'm sharing the screen again. There's some connectivity problem. It's okay. Be patient. Don't get panicked if this happens. I'm back. Okay. Now here again.
Excuse me, ma'am. When this
You are
stream
lagging
meeting
very
ends,
much.
do we have to reconnect?
No, you don't have to reconnect again. There is no problem. Okay, you stay connected, and there's somebody scribbling here. Let me find out who's scribbling. It's not that I will not be able to find out. I'll just find out. The name of that student will appear on the screen in front of me.
Ma'am.
La, 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 la.
Okay. I have found out, and I'm going to report to principal ma'am now. Now, How the forest areas were reserved for hunting. The British saw large animals as a sign of wild, primitive, and savage society. They believed that by killing dangerous animals, the British would civilize India. British gave rewards for killing of the tigers, wolves, and other large animals on the grounds that they posed a threat to cultivators. They felt that it is going to pose a threat to cultivators, so better to kill the tigers. A British administrator, George Yule, killed 400 tigers. Initially, certain areas of forests were reserved for hunting only. Much later did the environmentalists and conservators begin to argue that all these species of animals needed to be protected and not killed. Why do you think so, beta? Why do you think that these extinct species, like even if these animals become extinct, do you think it is going to affect the forests? If yes, why?
Yes, ma'am. The cycle of
Ecosystem.
nature gets
Ecosystem.
Yes,
disturbed.
it's going to affect the entire ecosystem of that area. If one particular carnivorous animals are extinct, they will not, the number of the herbivorous animals will increase. And if the number of the herbivorous animals increase, they will start eating up all the vegetation. It's going to affect the entire ecosystem of that particular area, isn't it? That's why the environmentalists they started realizing that killing of such large animals was not for the good of the forest. Now we'll go to the next slide. Now this is the last section of the second section, that is rise of commercial forestry, which is which kind of new trades, new employments, and new services began after the British took over, after the European colonized India and they implemented the new forest laws, and that led to the development of new trades and employment. So what was the change like? New trades and occupations started in forest products, not only India, but the entire world. But children, you already know that in previous centuries also, the forests had been providing various kind of products in which the tribals used to trade with the other, which provided them with the occupations like the skins and the hides, the bamboo baskets they used to sell. That was a means of livelihood for them already in India. So it was being practiced since centuries in India. For example, I'll give you an example of the Amazon forests in Brazil in South America. The Munduruku people of Brazil, Amazon, who were cultivators of manioc, or which we know as cassava, began collecting latex from the wild rubber trees for supplying to traders and became completely dependent on traders, which means earlier they were cultivating something else. They used to conduct shifting cultivation. But now, because then there was a need for the trading of the wild rubber, so they will grow only that and they will do trade in that only, and now they're completely dependent on this occupation. So there was a change in the occupation. In India, however, the trade in customary forest products like hides and horns, silks, ivory, bamboo products was already there. Even after the advent of the British, it was now completely regulated by the government. Earlier, there was no regulation, there was no control on the tribals like that. But now the British wanted to regulate this kind of commercial occupation of the tribals also. Grazing and hunting was restricted, and some tribes were regarded as criminal tribes and were forced to work in factories, mines and plantations. They were considered that entire उनके पूरे clan ही ऐसा है कि वो thieves हैं, वो चोर है और वो criminal tribes हैं. तो उनको हमें कोई और काम देना ही नहीं है, उनको जंगलों में से निकालो और उनको factories में और mines में और plantations में forcefully उनसे काम कराओ. At very low wages and very inhumane conditions, these workers used to live and work. In fact, even in today's scenario also, in today's India also, if you go to far off, deep forest in areas where mining happens, you will realize that post-independence also, these forest dwellers who have been forcefully brought into the mines to work, their condition is still very bad. They are living in horrible circumstances. They don't have good accommodation. They don't get good medical services. They don't get that kind of everyday wages. So their livelihood or everyday living is still in a lot of distress. So this was one thing which was introduced by the British, that they regarded some of the tribes in India as criminal tribes. So you can make out if a child is born in a specific tribe and he's regarded as a criminal. So this kind of injustice was started by the British when they took over the Indian forests. Well-being of people was at stake as these tribal worked at very low wages and lived in inhumane work conditions. They were not allowed to go back to their villages. I hope this much is clear to everyone.